Hi, I'm William Stewart, co-founder of Teleos. Welcome back to our verse-by-verse study on the book of Acts. We're in chapter 17, the second missionary journey. Paul has gone to Athens. He's there alone. He's trying to wait for his colleagues to come and be with him. And I think that he becomes uh, anxious or unhappy about this and is desiring to spread the gospel. So let's start in verse 16. Today's section's a little long. I struggle over this, how much to include. I'm trying to include one major point in each chapter. So I will summarize like usual. Again, I hate to do this. If you listen to the epistles, the letters from the apostles, the number of verses covered are shorter because we're going over theological and lifestyle content. So bear with me, but I hope that the video is useful. In verse 16, again, Paul's in Athens, and he wants to go and spread the gospel, so he finally goes. I'm not sure if his colleagues, Silas, Timothy, and perhaps others, have shown or not, but he is, and with the Jews and with devout persons. I think these are believing Gentiles in Jehovah, and in the market daily. So he goes and talks among the Greeks and the Epicureans. And so these are some of the religious orders of the day. These are ones who think that life should be a pleasure, not wanton pleasure, but a reasonable pleasure in life. And that's important. And the Stoics, these are ones who think that you should be rational and look at things in a very concrete um, manner with careful deliberation. Marcus Aurelius, the second century emperor, was famously a Stoic, and he pretty much acted like that as well. So they questioned, what this Paul was saying, and that he seemed to be bringing forth strange gods and talking about resurrection. But they did want to hear what he had to say because these people stood around all day around the marketplace and talked about philosophy, and they brought him to the Areopagus or Areopagus. I'm not probably saying that right. The Areopagus is a famous rock in the center of Athens. It pretty much was known since the foundation of Athens, whenever that was probably the early second millennium, though we don't have much history on it during that time. Much of it's myth, and but it was a center of political, cultural life on this rock, all in the center of Athens, also called Mars Hill. So Paul, recognizing what these people wanted, they were intellectuals. This is different than other places in the empire. Paul said in 2 Corinthians, I become all things to all people. He tries to fit in with the Jews and the Gentiles, and especially here, Athens, the center of art and philosophy and culture for Greece, and what it turns out to be really the Western world historically. He fits in with them too, and thus he gives them a speech which starts in verse 22. And basically, he starts by saying that he compliments them. He goes, "You are careful to observe the gods. You're religious." Now, King James translates this as superstitious. I don't think that's what he's saying. I think this is taken from the Latin Vulgate, and as Barnes says, he doesn't think it's a good translation. I think this complimentary of being observant to the gods, or wanting to please God, is a compliment to them. Now, of course, they had many gods, and and they were idols. So this is paganism. And Paul remarks in the next verse, they have a unknown God. Now, I think the unknown God was there as a catch-all for any gods they may have missed, because you remember the pagans were there to appease the gods. They were afraid of the gods. They spent their life trying not to make them angry, so to avoid being afflicted by them out of their anger. And so this unknown God was to perhaps appease any god they may have forgotten. But Paul comments that the real God is not made of stone, and they don't dwell in temples made with hands, and they don't the worship from man's hands and actions towards them means nothing, because God is the giver of life, of all things, and He determines. He made man. He determines. He made the humanity of man and where they live, setting them on the earth and setting limits to them, and gave them an ability to interact with Him. And He's not far from any one of us. So unlike the unknown God or all their pagan gods, the real God is powerful, living, and can be approached. He emphasizes again in 28 that he lives and moves. So he's a real thing. He goes, now that your ignorance in avoiding this God was in past times forgiven. But he indicates that this has changed, and it's changed with Jesus Christ and His death and resurrection. They are now responsible for this information, and that God has appointed a day. So they should repent, and He has appointed a day of judgment, that He will judge the world in righteousness, so that they should consider this. Now, some people then mocked this, but others believed, or at least were very interested, and in verse 32, and wanted to hear from Him again. And then Paul went away, but it does say in 34 that many believed, and he mentions some of these names. So what's the importance of this story? Well, Paul goes to the center of Roman culture, and really it's Greek culture. The Romans took their culture and religion from the Greeks, and many of them greatly admired Greek culture. And Athens, though it could have been destroyed numerous times throughout history when they rebelled against various kings, it was always preserved because it was always respected as a center of art and culture. And so Paul, recognizing this unique opportunity to address the people who considered philosophical things, he did so at the center of their religion, at the Areopagus. Sorry, I'm messing that up again, I'm sure. And tried to base his argument for Christ, differentiating Christ from their stone, lifeless gods, as opposed to the living God who had created them and put them on the earth and provided a way for the forgiveness of their sins through the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And the message resonated with many of them, it said. Okay, so thanks for joining me today. We'll continue on the second missionary journey next time. I hope you'll join me then.